Welcome to Integrate 09's Mixing and Mastering Forum. AT editor Andy Stewart plays ringmaster to a stellar group of studio supremos including George Massenburg, Paul McKercher, Wayne Connolly and Rick O'Neill to talk about the current landscape of mixing and mastering. The panel is joined by special guest Josh Pyke. With hundreds of world-class albums, arias and Grammys under their belt, the Mixing and Mastering Forum was a fascinating meeting of minds. Let's join them. Integrate will be back in August 2010. Royal Hall of Industries and the Horton Pavilion, Moore Park, Sydney. Put it in your diary, 24th to 26th of August 2010.
I just wanted to ask Wayne how he sees mixing, whether he sees it as a collaborative effort or are artists there under sufferance?
Good question, Andy.
Thank you.
Well put.
Spent weeks preparing it.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's hard to imagine that an artist wouldn't have something valuable or even vital to add to a mix. These massive sessions come in these days for mixing, and they're often like 140 tracks or so. And I would liken the artist to, the role of a Sherpa, where they're showing you, touring you, taking you on a tour through all the tracks, and you're just picking up all the fame and glory afterwards, sort of thing. But I mean, yeah, there are projects like that where you couldn't do it without the band. You actually need them to, if you're going to do it within a day, which most mixes these days are, I guess in Australia anyway. If you're going to be able to complete the mix in a day, you really need the band to talk you through the salient points of the mix and the key instruments and all that sort of thing. And at the same time, they need to know that there's, mixing's a bit like a house of cards. You've got to kind of build this very vulnerable thing, and you can't really build it if they're in your ear from the word go, discussing the nature of the kick drum before you've laid everything out. So I guess a band needs to know that you probably, as a mixer, need a good 7 or 8 hours to construct something that they can then shoot down in flames.
My second question is for Josh. As you certainly know what mastering is, you go to mastering sessions, as you say. But as an artist, when you get references just before mastering from the mix engineer, at what level are you expecting those mixes to be at? You're not expecting it to be finished, obviously, but what are you hoping will come later in mastering?
It's just that extra 5% or whatever, I guess. It's just a smoothness and a consistency. It adds a consistent. For my opinion of it is that it adds a consistency to the body of work. So, you record one song, especially these days. The way that people record is often with the way I recorded the last record was I produced some of it myself. I co-produced stuff with Wayne. I co-produced stuff with Paul. We did it at 3 or 4 different studios. I did some of it at home. And the mastering process is largely makes the body of work sound consistent for me, and like in terms of metering and a general level of compression, a general tonal quality that you sometimes need to correct if you have recorded in lots of different places with different people. McKercher did the track running for my last record, and he had the most freaky theory about it. I can't remember it because it was crazy, but maybe...
Do you want me to go through it?
Yeah, it was amazing.
Obviously there's things like energy levels, tempo that you need to build into a song running order. But what I did for Josh was I wrote down the start, the chord of the start and end key of every song, and then arranged all those chords so that they played a nice little tune through the album. So... that's now the phone. Well, the idea being is that when the outgoing song finishes and the new incoming song starts, you're left with this little ghost of the key of the outgoing song in your mind for maybe a bar.
Well, we always do that. We always do keys, but I've never thought of the idea of arranging...
I reckon it's all about the transition, because you've forgotten about the previous track within 10 seconds.
So if you press skip, you can just get a 5 second, and you get a song.
Well, yeah.
But the thing was, when I reviewed his theory, I had a different track listing previously, and I'd been sort of thinking about narratives and lyrical content and stuff like that. But when you listen to it as a body of work with Paul's theory, it actually flows a whole lot better, and it kind of creates a different story. It was a very interesting process.
I love this theory.
It was kind of
you should publish this.
Sort of like
Make
a
some money.
symphonic idea, you know, where you have movements of a symphony that move harmonically nicely into each other.
But I'm going to say it's my idea.
I build into, you know, get a single within the first 4 songs and all those kind of things as well. But yeah, that seemed to work.
So I mean, the question is then is the mastering like that? It's always the loudness war is a loudness war because no one has a chance to choose to be quiet. I mean, it seems to me that...
No, look, lots of guys come in and say, I don't want it too loud, and then you don't cut it. I don't make records really loud.
But then what happens to that record?
Well, then they come back the week later and say, I understand what you said, and look, it's not loud enough. And you're like, okay, well, we had this discussion for an hour, and yeah, and I understand all that stuff, but I didn't really know what it meant, so can we cut it louder?
George, you were talking earlier about, sorry to interrupt you, about the ideal level being actually 3 dB down from 0 dBFS.
Well, ideal in the sense of just not clipping anything. It's not. Maybe it's not 3. Maybe it's 2 point something. But making real sure that for all of the DDA converters and all of the CD players out there, that you never clip after the filter. You know, there's ringing after the filter. If you clip, you see a lot of ringing. That clipping in the filter turns to, you know, something very ugly sounding. And if you really wanted to stay away from that, you would stay away from 0FS. You know, you pull it back.
What, like 0.001 dB?
No, you got to do more than that. But that's a standard just to keep the red lights from coming on and for those line printers at the plants to stop chattering. But there's another thing that I wanted to bring up: the idea of why should it be loud for radio when radio is much less influential in so many parts of the world? Maybe less so here because you guys got great radio. But the U.S., it's fucking abysmal. It's just execrable. Yeah, I can't think more.
I looked up that word execrable. It doesn't seem to exist. And I was writing. You said that in the article. So that's your word.
Get online and we'll look it up. It is not my word. It's an English word. It's in Oxford Dictionary.
I just couldn't spell it, perhaps.
But it has something to do with excretion, and maybe that's a clue. And what I was going to suggest is that to confront that, you really need a huge artist, and my example is the Eagles. You need a built-in market that's not radio, and with the Eagles it was Walmart, and you need an engineer who had the guts to say to Bob Ludwig, it's too loud, and that's what they did on this last record, and until Glenn Fry found out about it and made him turn it back up a little bit. But it really it wasn't meant for radio. It didn't have to come on. And when you say loud to compete, you know, when you have a lot of kids these days listening to Led Zeppelin 2, and it's a quiet record with a lot of headroom, and then you can think of a lot of examples. I don't think we have to compete anymore. I don't think there's that same...
But then what would come to me, you know, via email, if we're remote mastering, is the manager of the band say, here's the record, we really want a great radio sound, and they give you 12 tracks that you know in your wildest dreams are not getting played on radio. Not getting played on any radio station.
Yeah, that's...
And so your response is, well, I know what they've asked for. Do I give them that, or do I give them what they want? Which is what they want is a record where you can put it on, you can play it for the next 20 years. That's what we're all trying to make. Records that stay in your car, you know, 3 divorces and the same record still in the car. That's what we all want to make.
But why is there who are they competing with? Like, as an artist, you just want your record to sound...
For me is someone will say to me,
great.
Yeah, I recorded this record in Perth. It cost, I don't even tell what it cost, maybe it cost $8,000. And I mastered the record, and the conversation the next day, remotely, is it doesn't sound like John Mayer. And you're like, well, John Mayer's record cost, you know, whatever, $500,000, and he's, you know, won all the Grammys and blah, blah, blah.
And they're expecting the mastering process is the thing
to be the magic panacea.
And
I'm always fascinated. Now, if the client's there, those conversations never, ever, ever happen. Whether it's an intimidation or whether it's just they understand that's not what we're doing. But the thing about remote stuff is that there's a huge expectation that something that we're going to do to your record is somehow going to be magical, and it's just horseshit. You know, what I'm doing is making